I feel right, Brian. I feel right.
Simon & Schuster Audio presents Get Anyone to Do Anything and Never Feel Powerless Again by Dr. David J. Lieberman. Read by Scott Bryce with an introduction by the author.
Hi, this is Dr. David J. Lieberman. Are you tired of being manipulated and taken advantage of? Do you sometimes feel you're not being listened to and don't get the respect and cooperation that you deserve? If you've ever wanted the ability to take control of every conversation and situation, now you've got it. Why go through life letting others lead you, when you can use the greatest psychological secrets to make things go your way and get anyone to do anything and never feel powerless again? As you listen to this program, you'll enter a world where psychology reigns and detecting deceit, changing a person's mind, or controlling a situation is reduced to an easy-to-follow formula, a series of simple techniques and tactics. You'll be able to use the most complete and advanced psychological strategies to enable your mind to become your greatest weapon. Most exciting, you should know that we're not talking about tricks that work sometimes on some people. This program contains only specific psychological tactics governing human behavior that will let you outsmart, outthink, and outmaneuver anyone, any place, any time. These are carefully formulated tactics based on specific psychological principles and can be applied to any situation. Imagine how easy life would be if you were able to predict and control the outcome of any encounter. And instead of wondering what was going to happen, you applied proven, fast-working psychological tactics to gain complete and total cooperation from all people in any situation. Have you ever asked someone to help you out and much to your surprise she happily obliged? Or perhaps you wanted to make a good impression and the person found you completely irresistible. You wonder if it was luck, the person's mood, or the situation, when in actuality you likely applied principles that govern human behavior without even knowing it. The good news is that you can duplicate those same responses systematically anytime you want with anyone. Because these techniques are based on human nature, factors such as culture, race, and gender are negligible. Throughout all of the examples in this program, the pronouns he and she are used interchangeably. I've done this to make the language less sexist, not to indicate that the technique is gender-specific. So, get ready to make life easy and have things go your way when you get anyone to do anything and never feel powerless again.
Let's explore first the psychological factors that influence our levels of interest in other people. You're going to hear just how easy it is for you to get anyone to like you or dislike you. By following a simple strategy based on human nature, you can create trusting, lasting friendships and relationships with complete ease. And so we're clear, these aren't ways to manipulate other people into liking you. Rather, you'll be orchestrating the application of certain psychological principles and methodologies to bring out and develop a natural chemistry. The obvious question then is, why do I need these techniques if all I'm doing is bringing out a natural chemistry? Doesn't it stand to reason that if it's there, and if it's not, it's not? While that seems as if it would be so, I'll now explain why the answer is no. It's in our nature as human beings to seek affiliation, to make friends, and to care about others. But sometimes it can be hard for a person to reach out and expose his or her true self and feelings. Most people want to like, want to love, want to connect, but they are afraid. Things get in the way of their innate desire. Things like fear of rejection, vulnerability, ego, and jealousy are but a few of the multitude of mixed emotions, attitudes, and beliefs that keep us from reaching out and bonding with others. What these psychological techniques do is to simply influence a person's natural state to emerge. We feel good when we give, when we love, and when we help. It's not about twisting someone's brain so that he does your unconditional bidding. It's about bringing the person's submerged desires to the surface. I'll begin by talking about a couple of different levels of interpersonal relations. At the core of all relationships, though, is mutual liking. No one will be attracted for any length of time to someone whom he doesn't like and respect. If you want to be successful in life, you often need to get cooperation from other people. And the number one rule for getting people to do what you want is to get them to like you. Getting anyone to like you is the fundamental concept of this program. What are those elusive traits and qualities that arouse feelings of friendship and likability in a person? You'll discover that they're not elusive at all. In fact, they can be reduced to a simple formula that will help you to develop a natural chemistry with anyone. The fact is, we like or dislike a person based upon a strict set of mostly unconscious processes. It doesn't happen by chance, but the reality that we're unaware of the process makes it seem as if it occurs without much rhyme or reason. Nothing could be farther from the truth. There are 9 psychological laws and phenomenon that affect, influence, and even alter what we think of someone, so you can get anyone to like you. The first is called the law of association. I'll explain it briefly. By pairing yourself with a pleasurable stimuli, another person will begin to associate you with this feeling. Studies have shown that if you were planning your vacation, for instance, you would associate those favorable feelings with whoever was around you at the time, and you would subsequently like the person more. Conversely, research in this area shows us that when you have a stomachache, for example, those around you become unconscious victims of circumstance, and you tend to like them less. Of course, there's more to liking than just this pairing of a pleasant stimuli with a person, but it can generate powerful feelings, either good or bad, toward you. So if you want to be liked by a person, try talking to him when he is in a good mood or excited about something. These feelings are anchored and associated with you, and this person will then come to have positive feelings toward you. The second way to get someone to like you is through repeat exposure. The old adage, familiarity breeds contempt, is commonly accepted, but interestingly enough, it's not true. In reality, it's the opposite. Numerous studies conclude that the more you interact with someone, the more he or she will like you. According to a recent study, repeated exposure to any stimuli, in this case a person, leads to a greater appreciation and liking, as long as the initial reaction is not negative. This is true of anything, a person, a place, or even a product. The greater the exposure, the more positive the response. This is why companies sometimes advertise just a picture of a product or its name, without any specific features or benefits of using the product. They don't need to tell us how wonderful it is, only remind us of it. By simply being around more, you will actually grow on a person. Sometimes we make the mistake of trying to appear mysterious or unavailable to someone, but in doing so, we diminish our number of interactions. Studies conclude that we become friends with, and tend to like more, those who are physically nearest to us because of this increased level of interaction. The third psychological tactic for getting anyone to like you is based on the law of reciprocal affection. Countless studies and common sense have established that we tend to like more those who like us. When we find out someone thinks well of us, we in turn are unconsciously driven to find him or her more likable as well. Therefore, you want to let your target person know that you like and respect him, if indeed you do. The fourth way to get someone to like you is to be similar to that person. In fact, it's not true that opposites attract. We actually like more those people who are similar to us and who have similar interests. We may find someone interesting because of how different he is from us, but it's the similarities and commonalities that generate mutual liking. Like attracts like. When you speak to this person, talk about what you both enjoy and what you have in common. How someone feels about you is also greatly determined by how you make her feel. about herself. You can spend all day trying to get her to like you and to think well of you, but it's how you make her feel when she is around you that makes the difference. Have you ever noticed how nice it is to be around someone who is complimentary and sincerely kind and warm? Conversely, have you ever thought about how annoying it is to spend 5 minutes with the person who's always finding fault with everything and everyone? These people seem to drain the life right out of you. Being a person who makes people feel good will go a long way toward their finding you quite likable. Just as we tend to like someone who shares our interests, we are also unconsciously driven to like a person when she appears as we do. This means that when someone makes gestures the way we do, or uses words or phrases as we do, we tend to find him likable. In this way, you're building rapport. Here are 2 powerful tips for establishing rapport. First, match posture and movements. For instance, if someone has one hand in his pocket, you put your hand in yours. If he makes a gesture with his hand, after a moment and without being obvious, you casually make the same gesture. Another way to build rapport is to match speech. Try to match his rate of speech. If he's speaking in a slow, relaxed tone, you do the same. If he's speaking quickly, then you begin to speak more rapidly. Another way to get someone to like you is to let him do a simple favor for you, making sure that it's not done out of a sense of obligation. This creates an unconscious motivation for the person to like you more and generates kind and warm feelings toward you. Often, in our attempt to get someone to like us, we make the mistake of doing nice things for him. And while he may appreciate your kindness and think you're a nice person, it doesn't make him like you more, even though you may be viewed as more likable. What you want is for him to have kind feelings toward you, not to just believe that you are a kind person. This is accomplished by him doing for you, not by you doing for him. Seeing someone you admire do something stupid or clumsy will make you like him more. So, if you want to be seen as more likable, be human. Do something embarrassing and smile at yourself. Don't try to ignore it or pretend it didn't happen. Self-deprecating humor is a terrific way to ingratiate yourself with anyone. When you show others that you don't take yourself so seriously, it makes them feel closer to you and want to be around you. Nobody likes a show-off or a person who is so consumed with himself and his image that he needs to pretend that he is perfect. We tend to like and gravitate toward those who are not self-absorbed and egotistical. Showing that you can laugh at yourself makes you infinitely more approachable and likable. Finally, if you want anyone to like you, you need to have a positive attitude. We all seek, like, and admire those who have a positive, happy outlook and perspective on life. Why? Because that's what we all want. And seeing this desirable spirit in others makes us like them more. Like confidence, a positive attitude toward life will help to turn you into a superhuman magnet for attracting people and getting anyone to like you. But wait a minute, doesn't misery love company? Actually, it does. Miserable people like to be around others who are just as annoyed with life as they are. But this quality does not make them like these people more. Someone who feels miserable enjoys commiserating and complaining with another miserable individual. But the minute he's in a good mood, he will abandon the toxic, annoying person. He seeks solace with somebody who feels as he does. But when he no longer feels that way, he will instantly leave this relationship. This is because he never liked the person. At least for this similarity, he enjoyed only the shared attitude. I've talked about the tactics for getting anyone to like you. Now let's explore how to get anyone to find you irresistibly attractive. While we all have different physical preferences, the tactics I'll discuss will greatly help you to maximize your assets, and in most cases, override another person's basic idea of what he finds attractive. How can this be done? Well, have you ever dated someone who was not even close to your type? Why'd you do it? Because he or she enacted these laws, most likely unwittingly, and you found that person simply irresistible. Although the strategies I'll mention are especially designed for romantic interest, it should be said that we rarely find attractive those whom we don't like. So, if you fold into your game plan the tactics I just discussed for getting anyone to like you, then you'll have an unstoppable overall strategy. The first tactic for getting someone to find you irresistibly attractive is to engage in an activity with this person where emotional arousal is high. This single tactic will be responsible for getting you more dates than any outfit or high-powered job ever will. It's a foundation of human behavior that when our body produces adrenaline, feelings of attraction to those present and sexual desire often result. Adrenaline, produced through any state of heightened arousal, fear, excitement, exercise, generates and intensifies passionate feelings. Anytime a person is aroused, such as with scary movies, amusement park rides, or even physical exercise, his arousal will in part be attributed to whomever he is with. In effect, the excitement he feels gets unconsciously translated into sexual desire and arousal. The next time you see a couple who appears to be aesthetically mismatched, ask where they met. Chances are good that they met under circumstances where arousal was high, maybe at the gym, or while one person, usually the better looking of the two, was apprehensive, nervous, or excited about something. Youth is often deemed to be a factor of physical attractiveness, but the good news is that you don't necessarily have to look young, but merely appear young. Even something as seemingly innocuous as posture and how a person walks play a powerful role in how youthful we judge him. Walking styles definitely influence physical attractiveness. People react more favorably to those whose walking style seems youthful than to those who seem elderly, regardless of the actual age or sex. What exactly determines youthful posture and gait? Flexibility. Observe a small child and note how flexible she is in comparison to an elderly person. Yoga will greatly improve your flexibility and will make a dramatic difference in your overall posture, walking style, and how attractive others perceive you. Did you know that gazing into a person's eyes can actually make the individual fall in love with you? That's the conclusion of numerous studies on attraction and romantic love. In one particular experiment, two opposite-sex strangers were asked to gaze into each other's eyes for 2 minutes. This study concluded that the act of simply looking into another's eyes for only a few moments was enough to produce passionate feelings for each other. To make use of this tactic, when you have a conversation with this person, look him directly in the eyes when speaking and listening. Most of the time, we sort of gaze generally at a person's face or divert our glance when in conversation. By looking into his eyes while speaking with him, you engage this psychological phenomenon without being obvious. Here's a tactic to use if your own beauty is limited, as it'll allow you to be seen initially as much more attractive than you might otherwise appear. A study correlating self-esteem and attraction showed that a woman who is introduced to a man will find him more appealing if her own self-esteem has been temporarily injured. While you wouldn't want to go out of your way to make someone feel bad about herself, should you become aware that this person has recently had a rejection, you should know you would appear to be more attractive to her than if her self-esteem were in high gear. This law is what's responsible for the good rebound effect, whereby a person finds herself fast into a relationship right after one ends, usually with someone who she wouldn't under normal conditions date. Finally, let's return to the law of reciprocal liking. We touched on this when I discussed how to get anyone to like you, but I'm mentioning it again because this law also impacts us at a romantic level. Studies have shown that when we find out that someone we like finds us appealing, it actually awakens romantic feelings within us. Again, not only do we like those who like us, but we're also more attracted to those people once we learn that they are attracted to us. This is because an essential aspect of passionate feelings is hope. If the other person has absolutely no interest in you, then you may find her attractive, but not develop a real and intense attraction and desire. Hope paves the way for stronger, more intense romantic feelings, and finding out that someone likes us gives us hope that a relationship is possible and will intensify our feelings towards him or her. So we've covered how to get anyone to like you and to find you attractive. Let's talk now about a psychological tactic to determine if someone is trying to take advantage of you. Let's face it, there are people in this world who are willing to lie to get their way. But here's one technique where you can instantly find out if a story checks out or if an alibi is nothing but a pack of lies. The technique used here is called conundrum. It works by introducing a piece of evidence and watching how your suspect handles it. Let's say a woman suspected that her husband was not at the movies with his friends, as he said, but out with his secretary for a late-night rendezvous. Simply asking him if he really did go to the movies would only prompt him to answer yes. This is because if he was there, he would say yes, and if he wasn't there, he'll likely stick to his story and say yes. And she wouldn't know whether or not to believe him. With this psychological technique, she introduces a made-up fact, and then sees how he handles it. For instance, she might say, "Oh, I heard that the traffic was all backed up because of a car accident right outside the theater." Now all she has to do is sit back and watch how he responds. This is because her husband is faced with an obvious conundrum. If he wasn't at the movies, he doesn't know whether to acknowledge that there was an accident because there might not have been one. And if he says that there wasn't much traffic and there was, then she'll also know he wasn't really at the movies. But regardless of his answer, he will do the one thing that every liar does when confronted with conundrum. He will hesitate while deciding how to answer. Remember, had he been at the theater, he would have instantly said, "There was no traffic. What are you talking about?" But the liar isn't sure because he wasn't there, and so he will hesitate in his answer, and in doing so, give himself away. On top of that, he will likely answer wrongly by agreeing to what you say, because he doesn't know that you're making up the accident. Now that you've learned a technique for spotting a false alibi, let's talk about how to take control of any situation and get anyone to take action. Succeeding in life is usually a matter of influencing the attitudes, beliefs, and thoughts of other people. This is not success through manipulation, but rather success through the application of specific psychological strategies. There's a big difference. I subscribe to the premise that most people are good, decent, and honest. But as you know from your own life, often our fears and hang-ups get in the way of our doing what's right for ourselves and for others. Most people want to help. It makes them feel good to do for others. So rather than force people to bend to your will, I'll tell you how to naturally bring out the pure and good desire and intentions of others to help you and to work with you. You can easily direct the behavior and thoughts of other people by your words and actions. By changing the things that you do and say to others, you'll change their attitudes and behavior toward you. It's really that simple. People do not operate in a vacuum, but instead they think and behave in response to their world. Change their world, and you change their responses. Let's talk about how to get anyone to take immediate action in any situation. By following a simple formula that uses 6 different psychological tactics, you can motivate anyone to take action. The first thing you want to do is narrow someone's options before you present them to him. Conventional wisdom suggests that with more options, he's sure to find something that he likes and that this will motivate him to take action. The opposite is true. If what you want him to do has numerous alternatives, then he will be less likely to choose any of them. Nobody enjoys being wrong, and we don't like to second-guess ourselves. Fewer choices mean that he will make a decision faster and be less likely to dwell on it afterward. There is a well-known furniture chain that holds on to every customer order for 72 hours before putting it through to the home office. Why? Because it found that over 60% of people within 3 days of a major purchase will come back to change their mind about the color, of fabric, or the design. With too many choices, most people freeze and take forever to decide. And once they do make a decision, their brain often churns with the worry, did I make the right choice? Unless you're in a retail situation where competition mandates selection, offer no more than 3 options, with 2 being ideal. One choice can lead to a person's feeling his freedom is restricted and cause him to back off. Any option, even one, gives him a sense of empowerment, and you want him to believe that he's in control. Another way to encourage action is by giving a deadline. Giving a deadline for action fulfills 3 separate and very important psychological motivations for fostering action. First, a task will expand or contract depending upon how much time you allow for it. The world operates on deadlines and expiration dates because if there's no immediate need to move forward, most people will not. It's human nature to wait until conditions become more favorable, or until we have more information, or until we are in a better mood before taking an action. So it's important to give a clear-cut deadline and let the person know that the action must be taken now because he may not have a chance to act later. This also invokes another psychological motivation in that we don't like our freedom to be restricted. Whenever we are told that we cannot have or do something, we end up desiring it more. So by letting an individual know that he may not get the opportunity to act in the future, you create a larger incentive toward moving now. There's another well-known, though less scrupulous, retail store that puts sold tags on items that it wants to get rid of. They do it for this very reason. When we see a sold tag on something, we are unconsciously driven to desire it more. Then, when we find out that another just like it may be for sale, we jump on the opportunity to purchase it. Consistent with this law are numerous studies that show that human beings respond to that which is scarce and becoming scarcer. I'm sure you find this to be true in your own life. When something is the latest or hottest and everyone wants one, it becomes that much more desirable. And when the window of opportunity to act continues to shrink, we are driven to desire it that much more. We place value on that which is scarce. Diamonds, gold, and oil are not essential to our well-being, yet they are highly valued, but only because of the perception that they are scarce. In addition to giving a deadline for taking action, you can also maximize the law of inertia. Sir Isaac Newton first informed us that objects in motion tend to stay in motion, and objects at rest tend to stay at rest. He might well have added that people in motion tend to stay in motion, and people at rest tend to stay at rest. If you are able to get the person moving in the right direction, either physically or mentally, starting with something easy or fun, he will likely continue to follow through. Why is this so? Human beings have a strong need for consistency with their actions. Several studies in this area clearly illustrate how effective this psychological factor can be when applied to motivating a person. They show us that when someone is presented with a small request and subsequently does it, he is infinitely more likely to agree to a larger request, the thing that we wanted him to do in the first place, what we really wanted him to do. However, if he is not first presented with and subsequently doesn't complete the smaller request, then he has no unconscious motivation for consistency. Called the foot in the door technique, there's a study that demonstrates this tendency for people who have first agreed to a small request to comply later with a larger request. Researchers asked homeowners if they would let them place a huge "Drive carefully" sign in their front yards. Only 17% gave permission. Other residents, however, were first approached with a smaller request. They were asked to put up a 3-inch "Be a Safe Driver" window sign. Nearly all immediately agreed. When approached a few weeks later, the homeowners were asked to place the gigantic sign on their front lawn. This same group overwhelmingly agreed. 76% consented to having the unsightly sign in their front yards. When we take a small step in one direction, we are driven to maintain a sense of consistency by agreeing to larger requests. Simply, those who had agreed to the smaller request had reshaped their self-concept to include the definition that they were serious about driver safety. Therefore, agreeing to the larger request was just doing something for a cause that they already and firmly believed in. Effective fundraisers know the number one rule for raising money. The easiest person to get a donation from is someone who has given money before. The fourth way to get anyone to take action is to use the law of expectation. The law of expectation states that people will do what you expect them to do. Speak and act directly, clearly, and confidently. Also, take the appropriate corresponding physical action. Whether it's moving toward the door, picking up a pen, or dialing the phone, people will respond to your assuredness and act accordingly. In other words, you can use more than just words. Use your actions as well to spark action. If, for example, you want someone to follow you, literally, begin walking without looking back to make sure he's coming. Your words and actions must convey confidence and expectation that the person will comply. If you want someone to take immediate action, you'll also need to show him that the task is simple and easy. Remember when I spoke about starting with something easy and simple to enact the law of inertia? Let's discuss another application of this process. When it comes to doing something that we like, we do what's called single tasking. When we think about things we don't want to do, we do what's called multitasking. What does all this mean? Well, if you have to pay your bills but never feel like doing it, what are the thought processes you might go through? You think, I've got to get all the bills together and organize them into different piles, get out my checkbook, stamps and envelopes, address each letter, write out the check, balance the checkbook, and so on. On the other hand, when it comes to doing something you enjoy doing, you internalize the steps in larger groups. For example, if you enjoy cooking, the steps might be, go to the store and come home and make dinner. If you hated to cook, everything from waiting online at the supermarket to cleaning the dishes afterward would enter into the equation. So if you want someone to take immediate action, you're going to show him that it's simple. If you want to discourage a behavior, you need only stretch out the number of steps into a long, boring, and arduous process. It's the same event, but depending upon how it's internalized, you'll generate a completely different attitude toward it. Finally, offer any small additional benefit for taking action now. For example, how many times have you heard, "But wait, that's not all," at the end of a commercial or late-night infomercial? The add-on is a highly effective tool for generating action, whether on TV, in person, or on the phone. So use it. It's estimated that the use of this technique increases the response rate from these programs by as much as 35%. It gives the person an extra benefit for acting, and the most fascinating thing is that it almost doesn't matter what it is. Once you've presented your request by employing the tactics I've already mentioned, then use an add-on. It can be any small additional benefit that the person gets for taking action now. For example, we can get ice cream, or I'll have a loaner car for you. You'll be amazed at how efficient this psychological tool can be. Now that you've learned some tactics for getting anyone to take immediate action, let me tell you a technique for getting anyone to follow through on a commitment to you. If you're tired of saying, "But you promised," this strategy will help you get any person to follow through on a promise. The most effective psychological tool for getting someone to follow through is to let him know that you believe that he's the type of person who does follow through. Using phrases such as, "You're the kind of person who," or "You've always impressed me with your ability to," or "I've always liked the fact that you," invokes the powerful psychological law of internal consistency. These phrases make the person feel compelled to follow through because you involve the ego and create a sense of desired consistency. People have an inherent need to perform in a manner consistent with how they see themselves and with how they think others perceive them. That's why one of the biggest mistakes people make is saying things like, "Come on, please do it," or "I just knew you weren't going to do this." This does not generate any psychological motivation to prove you wrong. These comments address someone's actions, not her identity, and force her ego to come up with reasons to justify her behavior, not to change it. For example, let's say you've asked someone to work on some files for you over the next 2 weeks. Don't say, "How are they coming?" or "Shouldn't you have started by now?" This only provides an opportunity for either an excuse or a chance for her to back out. Instead say, "You know, Sally, I appreciate your helping me with those files. I respect the fact that you're the kind of person who not only offers to help, but follows through until she gets the job done." With these words, you've wrapped the person's self-concept into a single cause. How you see her is woven into her behavior toward this project. You can be sure she'll comply and continue working on it so that your image of her is not tarnished. This makes it nearly impossible for her to say, "I'm too busy," or "I don't feel like doing it," because not only would she risk your questioning who she is, but this would leave her wondering as well. Simply, she fancies seeing herself as someone who follows through on things and can be counted on. If she abandons this project, then she has to ask herself, what kind of person am I? This is something very few people are willing or able to do. When you want someone to follow through, it's crucial to lay the groundwork when you first ask for the favor. This can have dramatic results. For example, researchers reported that ending blood drive reminder calls with the phrase, "We'll count on seeing you then, okay?" increased the show-up rate from 62 to 81%. Just this one phrase increased the rate by about 20%. So when you initially ask for the favor, make sure that you give a quick verbal confirmation. This dramatically increases the level of internal consistency as you solidify your chances of getting someone to follow through. But wait, there's more. When you initially ask a person for the favor, follow this 5-phase process to solidify his intent to help. You tell a friend, for example, that you're having problems with your computer, and he cheerfully offers to try to come by next Saturday. Now, he just might be saying this to be nice or because he actually intends to try to come by. But you really need his help, and to make sure you get it, you want to move him internally and turn a casual offer into a firm commitment. You'll see that by applying a specific psychological sequence, you can take a vague offer and turn it into a specific, firm commitment. Here are the 5 steps you should follow. First, get him to say it. When you say it, it's one thing, but when he says it, it takes his commitment to a whole new level. You want him to say the words. Therefore, you say, "Do you really mean that?" or "Are you serious?" In which case, he'll most likely respond with, "Yes, I'll help you on Saturday." The second step is to get a specific time frame. You want him to commit to a time in which he'll help you, or to a time frame of how long it will take for him to complete his task. In this example, you would say, "Great, what time? And any idea of how long it might take?" The third step is to develop a sense of obligation. It's important to let him know that because of his help, you are going to, in some way, alter what you were going to do. Viewing his help as a plus is only part of it. he needs, too, to see that the withdrawal of his offer will cause a disturbance. In this case, you might let him know that you're canceling other appointments and moving your schedule around to accommodate him. The fourth step is to appeal to his sense of conscience. You want to relay that you are now dependent upon him for his help. Now is the time where you let him know how important his help really is. Mention any consequences that you might suffer if he doesn't come through. In this example, it might be that your computer is necessary to get a report in, and maybe you'll get in hot water if it's not in on time, or something to that effect. The final step involves having him tell you how things will unfold. I call this step seeing is believing. Real estate agents know the power of this tactic. When showing a home, they want the people to envision it as theirs. Taking it from someone else's house to their home is a powerful visual technique. So when showing the customer around, they'll ask questions such as, where do you think you might put the TV, and where will the sofa go? In this example, you might ask your friend, what will you do first? Hook up the monitor or go through the booklet? You want him to see himself doing what he says he will. Using these 5 steps, you'll guarantee that your friend will follow through on his commitment to you. Now that you've learned how to get anyone to do what you want and follow through, let's talk about being an effective leader. You've got great ideas, a clear vision, and you're ready to change the world. One problem: you're leading, but nobody's following. Leadership seems so easy to those who have mastered it, and so elusive to those who desire it. Effective leadership, though, is not so much an art as it is a science. Let's explore the key essentials to turn anyone into a charismatic, passionate, and idealized leader. Several factors make up the dynamics of effective leadership, but let's focus on the personality of leadership. Effective leadership means thinking in terms of the other person. You can motivate any action in anyone if you appeal to her desires, her needs, and her wants. But before you do, bear in mind that people do not care what you know until they know that you care. People can sense whether or not you're walking your talk, and you cannot lead unless you truly believe. From the ancient classic Tao Te Ching, written by Lao Tzu, comes this enlightening passage about leadership. Quote, "Evolved leaders win the trust and support of the people through their complete identification with them. The interests of the people are naturally promoted because they become the interests of the leader as well." End quote. To accomplish identification, you must not set yourself apart from the crowd, but remain one of the people. In addition to identification, a leader must have humility. An ego, contrary to what is often thought, is not what makes a leader great. We need look no farther than Mahatma Gandhi or Martin Luther King Jr. to know that humility breeds followers. Those who rule with an ego rule with anger and fear, and when those things are gone, so too is their influence. It has been said that the best person to lead is the one who has the role of leader thrust upon him, rather than one who seeks to rule because he desires power. Do not set yourself up as better than the rest, only as more willing than others to lead, and as someone who is prepared to do what is necessary. The most effective tool for influencing and leading can be summed up in one word: simplicity. Nobody likes or is overly inclined to follow complex or disorganized strategies. Be clear and organized with your plan when you seek to inspire people to align themselves to your way of thinking. If your ideas are muddled with countless exceptions and are multi-focused, then you'll undoubtedly lose a person's interest and then his support. So now you know the effective strategy for leadership. But as every good leader knows, sometimes you need to be able to influence individual members to gain cooperation. So let's go a step farther and talk about how to present yourself as a person and as a leader. Here are some crucial personal do's and don'ts for for acting the part of a responsible and authoritative leader. First, never confuse passion with authority. Don't be overly emotional. Emotion conveys passion, which is fine, but that doesn't give you an air of confidence or of authority. Overly passionate leaders are believable, but no one wants to follow them. Second, never yell or raise your voice to anybody. This will cause you to lose respect. And if you can't control yourself, then you can't control others. And if you can't control others, then they have no reason to listen to you. Finally, third, be respectful of everyone. By ignoring a person, you do not show how big and important you are, but how small you are. By giving everyone respect and attention, you gain the one incredible ingredient that is essential to every great leader: charisma. This elusive trait is gained by showing people how great they are, not by showing them how wonderful you are. People will follow someone who makes them feel good and valuable, not someone who makes them feel unimportant. Great leaders do not try to get the... Let's now look at some techniques for making your daily life easy. If you want to simplify your life or just plain make things easier, then these tactics will be invaluable for you. For life's little tribulations and uncertainties, you'll learn exactly how to make sure that things go your way every time. One way to make your life easier is to learn how to get anyone to forgive you for anything. Let's say you've screwed up, you feel guilty, and you've promised never to do it again. If that's enough to set things straight, terrific. However, we all know that sometimes it takes a lot more than an "I'm sorry" to make things right. Let's see how we can use psychology to help you get forgiveness fast. The psychological strategy in seeking forgiveness for cheating on your spouse is, of course, going to be different than if you were late for a meeting with your boss due to a traffic accident. Also, the tactics vary, depending on whether it's your behavior or your words that got you into trouble. So first, let's talk about correcting misdeeds. Then we'll discuss how to gain forgiveness when you misspeak. In instances where your intentions were good but outside influences interfered, your excuse should be due to circumstances beyond your control. That excuse will be received much more favorably than an excuse that mentions only reasons that you had control over. For instance, simply saying that you didn't feel up to it or that you completely forgot will likely generate unnecessary hostility and anger toward you. However, if a 6-car pileup on the freeway or a flat tire is the culprit, you'll be more readily forgiven. The reason for this is that nobody wants to feel as if she's being taken advantage of or think that you didn't care enough. Therefore, by placing the blame on an outside source, you remove the attitude that leaves her feeling angry and unimportant. So, if your mistake was beyond your control, let the person know this. One caveat is that you also need to let her know that you planned for this possibility but were unsuccessful. For instance, if traffic caused the delay, you want to cut her off at the pass because she may be thinking, "You knew this was important to me. Why didn't you leave more time?" When explaining the circumstances, also include the fact that you anticipated the possibility of this problem, in this case, heavy traffic, but it was much greater than you could have reasonably prepared for. One other thing to keep in mind is that your apology should be sincere and specific. It's been shown that giving a specific accounting of the circumstances involved, as opposed to vague generalities, is highly effective in reducing a person's anger. It's all in the details. This should suffice, but if it doesn't, you can proceed to the next level of tactics, which are designed for more severe breaches of trust and consideration, and when the circumstances were not beyond your control. When you've done something wrong, this person feels violated in some way. There is a sense of betrayal. She feels you don't respect her enough, you don't care, or you're not interested in caring. Therefore, simply saying, "I'm sorry," doesn't correct the situation because you haven't restored her sense of dignity. Your actions took away some of her power. To make her feel better, You need to return her psychological state to the way it was. Here's the framework for a 4-phase process that will ensure your success in achieving swift and complete forgiveness. Phase 1 involves responsibility, apology, and sincerity. Unlike the previous situation, here it's important for you to take full and complete responsibility for your actions. Do not shift blame or assign excuses. This will only exacerbate the situation. The person is expecting you to some degree to lay the blame onto others. This doesn't help because if the blame is placed somewhere else, then only that other thing or person can restore that person's sense of importance. If you take the responsibility, then you have the power to set things right. Again, balance must be restored to the person's ego. She needs to know that she was not taken advantage of and that her feelings were considered. Next, apologize for your behavior. Occasionally we forget to actually say the words, "I'm sorry." While just these words often aren't enough, they are essential to your overall strategy for gaining forgiveness. Sometimes it's very hard to say this, but as hard as it is, it's that much more important to gaining forgiveness. Finally, make sure that your sincerity comes out. Any apology that is not sincere will not be believed. And if you are not believed, then you'll not be forgiven. If you're not truly sorry, then you'll likely do what you've done again and put this person through more pain and sadness. So if you don't mean it, don't say it. If you're not truly sorry and remorseful, it might be time to reevaluate the relationship or situation. Phase 2 is about remorse and punishment. This very important phase in the process involves letting her know that you're willing to face and accept any and all consequences for your actions. An apology without remorse is like a sports car without fuel. It looks great, but doesn't do anything. Showing remorse gives her back the one thing that she lost: power. She'll likely do nothing, or much less than if you never put your fate in her hands. But remember, your fate rests in her hands at this point anyway. But freely giving her the power to determine your fate and acknowledging it as hers is extremely important. She wants justice for what you've done. She wants to be able to exercise her rights as a human being and be given the respect she deserves. You can start by saying something such as, "I know what I did was wrong. You have every right to be angry with me. I'm willing to accept the consequences for my actions." Give her back what you took, and you'll be forgiven. So far, these tactics in phases 1 and 2 have you above water, but if you want to reach dry land, you'll need to go farther and implement phase 3. This involves explaining to her how the set of circumstances that created this event can never happen again. Part of her disturbance over your behavior is the unpredictability of your actions. That is, it's something that has happened and can happen again without notice or warning. If you can assure her that the combination of events can never repeat itself, then this will go a long way toward alleviating much of her anxiety. By isolating the event, you minimize its impact on her life as an anomaly and not something that she'll ever have to deal with again. Now is the time that you have to answer why. Her entire world has been upset. Nothing makes sense, and you have to give her a plausible explanation as to why you did what you did. She will not be satisfied and is unlikely to be able to let it go unless she understands what led to your behavior. A simple, "I don't know," or "I wasn't thinking," will do nothing to allay her fears of a repeat performance. But here, you run into a challenge. One that usually sinks most people who have gotten this far. How do you explain your actions without sounding like you're defending them? This is the last thing you want to do. The very best way to explain your actions is to root them in fear. Whether it's personal or a business situation, you're still dealing with human beings. And all people understand fear. It's primal and pure. Your fear can be expressed in different ways, such as, I was scared because things were going so well, or I feared that you would fire me if I didn't lie about the warranty, or I lied because I feared you would hate me if you found out the truth. Now your actions are seen less as a betrayal that violated trust and more as an irrational act of fear by a confused person. It furthers your vulnerability and helps to restore her feeling of power and dignity. By assuaging your fears, she takes an important and active role in restoring her own sense of control. Remember, the objective is to restore the sense of balance, and this, in conjunction with the other tactics, does just that. Because rooting your motivations in fear diminishes the perception of your ego. Simply, fear is a response to feelings of your inadequacy to deal with the situation. This is in stark contrast to a self-centered mindset, one which you do not want to present. Finally, it's important to let her know that your actions produce no enjoyment, financial gain, or any type of benefit whatsoever. Since no one can go back in time, you need to relay that not only was it a mistake, but also that it didn't produce the anticipated benefits. Remember, the key to forgiveness lies in restoring balance to the relationship, be it personal or professional. If you gained in some way, then you will have to give back more in order to set things right. Never admit to any benefits or satisfaction from your behavior. For example, you want to say things such as, "The sex was lousy," or "I was more miserable and so filled with guilt afterward." This strategy will set into motion her forgiveness. Now you have to wait for the only thing you can't manipulate: time. Once sufficient time passes, all of the elements will fall into place and your life as you knew it will once again be restored. Just as getting someone to forgive you is a difficult situation, so is the circumstance of breaking bad news. Life can sometimes deliver to us the unkindest of blows. When you're in a situation where you are to be the bearer of bad news, this strategy will benefit you greatly. You are about to learn that you can dramatically alter how a person responds to any situation by changing the way you deliver the information. Language has a powerful impact on how we perceive and, consequently, feel about what we hear. This is often why good salespeople know they shouldn't say, "Sign the contract." Instead, they suggest that you okay the paperwork. Even though you're doing the same thing, you don't feel as comfortable signing the contract because it's been embedded into us ever since we were little not to sign anything and to have a lawyer look at any contracts. But okaying the paperwork, well, that's something you can do without worrying. Language alters our perception of reality because we see the world through words. Language is the basis of thought, and thought is the extension of emotion. Therefore, you can substantially decrease a person's reaction to a situation by choosing the right words. So what are the right words? You want to avoid harsh language. Don't use words that have a strong negative connotation. Doing so avoids an automatic reaction, like we often have to signing contracts, and helps the information to be processed and internalized more slowly. In much the same way that a body goes into shock if there's an overload of pain, the mind is similarly shocked. However, if we receive the information in smaller intervals, using softer language, the shock is diluted, and that helps to severely lessen the impact of the news. We say time is the great healer because it is the suddenness of negative information that amplifies the pain. The passage of time allows us to put things into proper perspective. When something first happens, we have no perspective because it is in the present. It's all-consuming. Let's say that you've just found out that your 9-year-old son took the family car for a joyride and was brought back by the police. You might be understandably upset. However, instead, what if you just found out that your 19-year-old son took the car 10 years ago? In both scenarios, you just found out the news, but your reaction is entirely different. Why? because of a perceived passing of time. Time is a powerful psychological tool that can dramatically shift our perspective. When a person becomes upset about an event in her life, it's because of one or more of these three cognitive beliefs. 1. She feels that the situation is permanent. 2. She feels that it is critical, meaning that it's more significant than it really is. And 3. That it is all-consuming, that it will invade and pervade other areas of her life. When any or all of these beliefs are present, it dramatically increases our anxiety and despondency. Conversely, when we think of a problem as temporary, isolated, and insignificant, it doesn't concern us at all. By artificially deflating these factors, you can instantly alter a person's attitude toward making it more positive. Certainly, the type of news will dictate how this can best be used, but if you can address at least one of these factors, you'll be effective in diminishing the unpleasant reaction. It's also important to keep in mind that when information is ambiguous or has vague implications, we often don't know how to respond. We take our cue from others. For example, if you're in a crowded movie theater and somebody yells, "Fire!" how might you respond? Research tells us that if the rest of the audience sat in their seats, you would likely remain seated as well. But if there was a mad rush for the exit, it's likely that you too would begin to leave. When we are unsure of what something means, we look to our world to provide us with information on how upset we should be. The more relaxed and assured you are in relating the news, the calmer she will be. Another psychological technique, which is part of your overall strategy, is based on the law of contrast. This law states that we don't think and see something as it is by itself, but in relation to other things. In essence, we contrast and compare. By contrasting the situation with something worse, it's perceived in a new light and in a better perspective. Let's take an example that incorporates some of the tactics I've just mentioned. In this scenario, a physician determines that his patient has diabetes. Listen to the difference between these two approaches and decide if you were the patient, which doctor would you rather hear the news from? Dr. A says, "Mr. Doe, I'm sorry to have to tell you this news, but you have diabetes. My laboratory tests confirmed this just now, and as you may or may not know, it can be life-threatening and you can face severe complications like amputation and blindness. Everything in your life has got to be changed from this second forward, what you eat, how you exercise, and so on. I'm truly very sorry." Here's Dr. B's approach. "Okay, you're in good health, except for a variance in your blood sugar levels. I'm pleased with these results and that you came in when you did, because it could have turned into something much worse. You're in good company, too. There are about 20 million other folks who have diabetes. That's the technical name for it. And the best news is that it's completely controllable, and, when properly cared for, you won't even be aware of it. As a matter of fact, I think you've had this for quite some time, and you'll see with an improved diet and exercise program, you'll have a lot more energy and vitality." As you heard, both doctors delivered essentially the same information, but Dr. B gave the news in smaller increments, which allows for the person to begin to accept the idea, mentally digesting the situation and hence significantly lessening the impact. He used softer language and conveyed that there were positives to the situation, such as improved overall health. His entire tone was positive, and he said phrases such as, "I'm pleased we caught this," instead of, "I'm sorry." Of course, the patient will need to be informed of other details, but in time. And once the newness is digested, more information can be taken in without the usual shock and accompanying depression. I've talked about how to handle a few difficult situations in everyday life, but now let's discuss how to handle a few of life's most annoying problems. It would definitely make your life easier if you could turn a rude and obnoxious person into your best friend. So, I'll tell you a psychological technique for winning over anyone in no time. Whenever someone acts rudely or cruelly to you, it's always because of one of 4 reasons. First, she thinks you dislike her. Second, she feels threatened by you. Third, she acts cruelly to everyone. And fourth, you've given her a reason to dislike you. If you've given her a reason to dislike you, then listen again to my advice on getting someone to forgive and forget. If it's any of the other 3 reasons, then keep listening for a terrific and highly effective psychological strategy to adjust to anyone's attitude toward you. First, make sure the problem isn't yours. By this I mean that research shows us that a person with a positive self-image tends to assume that others will respond kindly to them. And the reverse is also true. Those with a poor self-image tend to believe that other people simply don't like them. Since they don't like themselves, they feel that other people dislike them for the same reasons. Therefore, if you have a negative self-image, this is what could be causing your belief that you are disliked. If this is the case, you'll need to work on developing positive self-esteem. Moving beyond self-image, if you expect someone to dislike you, independent of how you feel about yourself, she usually will fulfill that prophecy. Even if you have a healthy self-image, but believe that a certain person doesn't like you, you're likely to perceive this person as behaving in a way consistent with your beliefs. Additionally, your expectations may even cause her to behave in this way. Expectations play a powerful role in how our relationships unfold, because people will treat you the way that you expect that they will. Make sure that it's not your attitude or false beliefs that are causing the rift. Assuming your self-image, your beliefs, and your attitudes are not the problem, then listen now to this rock-solid game plan toward turning anyone into your best friend. Many studies indicate that once we discover someone likes us, we tend to like him or her as well. This is what's known as reciprocal affection. We tend to admire, respect, and like someone once we are told that they have these same feelings for us. Now, what's the best way to communicate your affinity for this person? Tell a third party, maybe a mutual friend, that you honestly like and respect this person. Once this information makes its way to the other person, you'll simply be amazed at how fast she comes around. Whether it's a coworker, boss, assistant, or neighbor, everyone needs to feel appreciated. Let this third party know how you genuinely feel about this person and watch the magic happen. You may be thinking, why can't I just go and tell her myself? Why all this cloak and dagger stuff with a third party? Well, there are actually 2 reasons you don't want to tell her yourself. One is that you run the risk of her thinking that you're insincere. When you hear something from a third party, we rarely question that person's veracity. This is because the thinking is, what's she got to gain by lying to me? If she sees you as a threat, then the source of her dislike is rooted in jealousy and envy. You can dissolve her negative attitude in a similar way, with just a slight variation. Here, you want to focus on how you admire her for who she is and what she's done. It's very difficult for anyone to dislike you or treat you poorly once she knows that you respect her. By letting her know, again via a third person, that she has your respect, you align yourself with her, and she sees you as an ally and not as a threat. Okay, you use the third-party tactic to turn her around, but when you do run into her, do you just make small talk? Talking about the weather isn't a bad choice, but if you really want to make an impact, then use the oldest rule of getting anyone to like you. It comes courtesy of Dale Carnegie, who was one of the greats in understanding human nature. On the occasions where you do speak with this person, keep this next piece of advice in the front of your mind. And it's this. Become interested in other people, and you will get them to like you faster than if you spent all day trying to get them interested in you. It's dreadfully easy to get a person to go on endlessly about herself. Just ask questions about her, and the floodgates of conversation will open. But now, a one-sided conversation is more of a monologue than it is a dialogue. So when you do offer up information about yourself, remember this rule of human nature. We like people who not only like us, but who are like us. If she discovers that you both share similar beliefs or ideas about something, you will have created a psychological bridge that will make her feel closer to you and respond more favorably. And above all, remember that someone likes you based not on how he feels about you, but on how you make him feel about himself. Whatever the dynamics of the relationship, by making him feel comfortable, welcomed, and relaxed, you'll go a long way toward developing a good, true, and lasting friendship. You've just learned how to turn an obnoxious person into your friend. But sometimes you just need to get someone to sit down and shut up. It's important to know how to stop verbal abuse instantly. When someone is rude to us, our first reaction is to protect our ego. We respond with something such as, "How dare you talk to me like that?" or "I don't like that and now I'm upset." We make this angry person our problem. Why should you let someone else dictate how you feel? To get angry would be to give another person control over your emotional state. That's a lot of power for one person to possess, especially someone who's rude to you. This is more than just pie-in-the-sky self-help talk. There's actually a powerful psychological component to it. If you resist your initial inclination to get defensive, you may be surprised at what happens. Instead of responding, "Why are you treating me like this?" try saying instead, "You seem to be having a rough day." Rather than saying, "I didn't do anything, don't talk to me like that," say, "This seems to have upset you." Don't take possession of his problem. It's his problem, not yours. The psychological dynamics change dramatically as soon as you use the word I or me. Then it becomes something between you and him. By using the word you keep the ball in his court, and the problem remains his sole property. Aside from not upsetting yourself, you've now forced the person to think and respond defensively, in effect explaining his actions to you. Don't force him to find reasons to support his claim that you've done something wrong. Instead, ask him what's wrong with him, not you, and let him spend all day on this. You'll find that by not responding defensively, you won't become as upset by the exchange, because it has nothing to do with you as long as you don't try to take part ownership of it. If this abusive behavior is part of a larger pattern, and you have an ongoing relationship with this person, then I have further advice for you. At the core of interpersonal relations is the truth that a person will treat you the way that you train him to. You need to let him know that his behavior is unacceptable and will not be tolerated. So the first thing you want to do is to call his attention to his behavior and let him know that it is not acceptable. In a perfect world, this would be enough. But we don't live in a perfect world. So let's look at why he does this and what you can do about it. He treats you this way because it makes him feel powerful. If you are worried about your physical safety, then acknowledge his authority and power to diffuse his anger. To do this, simply say, "You're right, I'm sorry." This magical phrase usually shuts down the verbal stream of venom. Then, remove yourself from the situation and contact the appropriate authorities. If that approach isn't working fast enough, you can use this tactic. Become more upset at yourself than the person is. He's yelling because he wants you to feel as he does, angry, hurt, frustrated, and small. So if you make him believe that you feel worse than he does, he accomplishes nothing more by yelling. When you beat yourself up, he has no reason to continue kicking. When the tirade is over, leave and give serious thought to the relationship. Just as you don't want someone to be rude and offensive to you, you also want to be able to give the harshest criticism without ever offending. When you want to tell it how it is, but you're worried about bruising his ego or making him feel embarrassed, use the psychological strategy that I'm going to tell you about. You'll be able to say your piece without his going to pieces. When you give criticism this way, you can be sure you won't offend anyone. The ego is the pivotal criterion because that's the only part of us that really gets injured. Think of the ego as an image or a projection of how we would like the rest of the world to perceive us. And when this image of ourselves is threatened, we become self-conscious. And when it's injured, we become hurt and lash out. The ego is fragile because it's only an image. And when you deal with others, you must seek to protect their egos if you want to spare their feelings. And the more someone believes that what you're saying is true, and depending upon how sensitive he is to it, the more careful you need to be. There's a right and wrong way to criticize, and how you do it can make all the difference in the world. As you may have experienced, sometimes you're open to criticism, and other times the slightest comment can make you feel like crawling under a rock or make you extremely defensive and argumentative. What you say, how you say it, where you say it, and when you say it, all have a bearing on how your comments are received. The most important part of this overall strategy has to do with the timing of your conversation. The best time to criticize is when you're removed from the event. For instance, if you want to have a discussion with your lover on how she can improve her lovemaking skills, don't bring it up while you're in bed 5 minutes after sex. Discuss it when you're removed from the environment, out for a drive perhaps, days later. Being removed from the environment, as well as putting time between the event and your critique, is also significant. Because while you may verbally assure the person that it's no big deal, you don't convey that attitude by speaking up immediately. By waiting a few days, you reduce his ego attachment to the situation, and he's less sensitive to criticism. But the closer to the event that you criticize, the more he identifies with his behavior and the more defensive he will become. Additionally, when you do criticize, follow these 8 psychological strategies to ensure that you can be free to voice your objections without worrying about offending him. 1. Without making a big deal about it, let him know you're saying this because you care. You care about him and your relationship. 2. Always criticize in private. Even if you think that it's no big deal, you are best to do it behind closed doors. 3. Preface your criticism with a compliment. For instance, Bill, you're the most wonderful lover I've ever had, though I was wondering about... 4. Criticize the act, not the person. In other words, instead of saying, you're annoying when you... It's better to say, you're great, but on those rare times that it happens... 5. Don't assume or insinuate that this is something that he's doing knowingly, consciously, and deliberately. It's best to approach this as something he's doing unwittingly or even unconsciously. 6. Share some of the responsibility if you can. Notice I didn't say share the blame. This psychological tactic is to make it you and him against this thing, not you against him. In other words, say something like, I should have been more specific when we covered this. This is, of course, more effective than, I hate it when you... 7. Offer the solution. If there is no answer, then you should never have brought it up in the first place because it serves no purpose. And if you believe that no matter what you say he won't take your advice, then also don't bring it up. If you do, then you're only serving your own interests, and this will not help the situation. And finally, 8. Criticism is most effective when you tell him that he's not alone. By conveying that whatever he's done or doing is very common, it diffuses the impact on the ego, meaning he doesn't take it so personally. And that's really the reason we become so offended. It's because we take it personally. By following these 8 psychological approaches, you'll always be able to offer harsh criticism without ever offending. So far, you've learned about handling some of life's most annoying and difficult situations. Now I'd like to conclude with important advice on handling a dangerous situation. Getting out of almost any physical or sexual assault. Of all the tactics in this program, this may be one that can save more than just your sanity and self-respect, but possibly even your life. To understand the dynamics and application of the psychological techniques, I'll divide these attacks into 2 categories. First, sexual assaults, and then physical assaults. I'm going to tell you about 5 techniques you can use during a sexual assault, and you can apply them in ascending order. Bear in mind, there are no absolutes. You must use your judgment and decide on the best approach given the situation. First, in situations where you and he know each other, you either have a relationship with this person or you've met before, pretend to be interested and excited in what the person is doing. In an attempted rape situation, your only objective is to get away before you're harmed. This can best be accomplished by letting your attacker believe that you don't want to get away. Therefore, if you initiate or carry through some small degree of affection, he, in his heightened state of arousal, will likely accept your intentions as honest. Then, when he is vulnerable or you have an opportunity, injure him and or leave the situation. Remember that if he believes you're a willing participant, he'll behave less aggressively and much differently. This will give you control over your circumstances. The biggest mistake people make is to resist initially, either verbally, physically, or both. Resist your instinct to defend yourself. If you do not become defensive, then he will not be as aggressive and will move more slowly and carelessly, giving you your out. Your first tactic should be to look for an escape, but if you can't, let him think that this is what you want. Some rapists who know the victim believe that this person wants it, so you don't need to do a lot of convincing. His guard will be down as long as he doesn't think that you want to escape. And when he relaxes his guard, move. Aside from initiating some small gesture toward physical contact, smile. That's right, smile. This is a universal sign that you're comfortable and accepting of the situation. Let him see a big, broad smile. It will work, and it can save your life. Depending on how well you know this person, you may need to provide for a reasonably logical motivation for your wanting to have sex with this person. If you are convincing enough, you can try to convince him, too, that it just has to be perfect and that you want to change of venue, to go somewhere where it will be more romantic. If you don't know your attacker, you can still try to convince him of your interest. Assuming you're able to carry on some sort of dialogue, you should tell him that this is your exact fantasy and that you want it to be just perfect. Tell him what to do, such as lie down, take off your shirt. If he complies, then you'll have gained some control of the situation. Then do whatever it takes to either incapacitate him and or escape. An alternate technique you could use to get out of a sexual assault is to try to calm your attacker and persuade him not to carry out the attack. Some women have been successful by simply telling their attackers not to continue. For this to be effective, the woman must speak confidently and assuredly. The third technique is, if you are at home, tell him somebody will be back soon. If you are in a more public place, yell, scream, and try to create any type of disturbance. Another technique is to try to turn off the attacker, repulse him by vomiting, urinating, or belching. You could also turn off the attacker by claiming to be sick or have AIDS. You could also pretend to act insane or mentally deranged. Finally, you could use physical self-defense. If you decide to fight, make sure that you're not afraid to inflict serious pain on your attacker. Hit him where it hurts. Eyes, groin, throat, and nose are particularly vulnerable. If you feel that you will be injured and hurt by defending yourself, do not feel guilty. Survival is your ultimate objective. A victim who doesn't fight back should never feel guilty or ashamed. Sometimes it's the smartest thing to do. Now that I've discussed getting out of sexual assaults, let's learn how men and women can get out of just about any physical assault. Since your sole objective is to get out of the situation without being injured, it's smarter to walk away with a bruised ego than a bruised face. So if somebody steps on your foot, cuts you off, bumps into you, whatever, let it go. Did he do it on purpose because he's looking for a fight? Was it an accident? You don't always know. And most important, who cares? If you can walk away, walk away. In turn, if this is happening with someone whom you know and is beginning with verbal abuse, then understand the dynamics here. The person treats you this way because it makes him feel powerful. To diffuse his anger, acknowledge his authority and power. On the other hand, if neither of these tactics is working fast enough, then remember, become more upset at yourself than the person is. He's yelling because he wants you to feel the way he does, angry, hurt, frustrated, and small. So if you make him believe that you feel worse than he does, he accomplishes nothing more by yelling. When you beat yourself up verbally, he has no real motivation to hurt you physically because his ego is being assuaged. Another tactic goes with the old saying, never argue with anyone who is crazier than you. Do whatever you can to make him think that you're nuts. Scream, yell, talk to imaginary people, whatever. Here's why this works. He is looking to fight you because he believes that he'll be victorious. No matter how angry we get, we rarely pick a fight with someone whom we know can beat the daylights out of us. If you do what he doesn't expect, then the person will conclude that you are unpredictable, capable of anything, and may indeed be a threat. He's no longer in control of the situation and hence doesn't feel as powerful. Finally, if that's not working, then hit first and hit hard. Don't start a fight, but if you have no choice, make sure that you finish it. Hit him where it hurts. Eyes, groin, throat, and nose are particularly vulnerable. Remember, your sole objective is to get out of the situation without being injured. And by using the tactics I've discussed, you'll be able to get out of almost any physical or sexual assault.
The program you've just listened to offers psychological solutions to correcting problems, not people. For instance, if you find yourself in an abusive relationship, this program will certainly help you to take control of harmful situations, but it won't address the larger issue, which is why you are in this relationship. If you act without thinking and need someone to forgive you, this program will also help you to be forgiven. But if you are constantly apologizing for things you've done, it won't help you to think more about the ramifications of what you do and say and how they can hurt someone. This is like no other self-help program, because it makes life easy without much effort. You simply plug in the psychological technique and the problem is solved. But if you continue to find yourself in these difficult situations, I would encourage you to look more closely at your choices in life. In compiling these tactics, every attempt was made to instill a sense of morality, using the barometer of the greater good for all concerned. For example, using deception is acceptable if it will keep you from being harmed or taken advantage of. You'll notice that you feel much better about yourself and life in general. This is because much of our inner turmoil and frustration comes from our inability to deal effectively with people and to handle difficult situations and conflicts. So as you begin to apply these techniques, you'll find new doors opening up for you as you gain a greater sense of who you are and what you are capable of. And this renewed self-image can help you to shape your future into anything that you choose. Instead of being a victim of the tides, you will be able to direct your destiny and take full advantage of life's greatest gift, free will. This program was intended to help give people a sense of empowerment and control over their lives. But with that control comes tremendous opportunity. It can, if you'll let it, allow you to benefit others in ways you never could have before. When things in our own life are not going well, it can be hard to extend a helping hand to others. When you're in control, you're accomplishing more and feeling terrific about yourself and about your life. Empowering others will allow you to take your personal growth to an entirely new level. Enjoy your new life.
Get Anyone to Do Anything and Never Feel Powerless Again was written by Dr. David J. Lieberman and read by Scott Bryce. Editing and post-production by Frog Pond Productions. The associate producer was Will Carlino. Get Anyone to Do Anything and Never Feel Powerless Again was produced and directed by Elisa Shokoff. This has been a presentation of Simon & Schuster Audio.